Dinner at my parents' house always felt like a performance. The same long table, the same mismatched silverware, the same stories my mom repeated as if no one had heard them before. Everyone had their assigned seats too, like we were stuck in some suburban version of a courtroom. My sister Cynthia always sat across from me, the star witness for the prosecution, smiling like she'd already won. That night started no different. My father talked about the stock market like he actually understood it. My mom bragged about her new neighbor's dog-sitting business. Cynthia laughed at every joke, touching her husband's arm just enough to remind everyone she had one. I was halfway through my salad when she stood up, tapping her glass with a spoon. "Before we eat, I have an announcement," she said, her voice just a little too proud. Everyone looked up. I didn't. Announcements in my family never went well for me. Cynthia smiled wider, the kind of grin people practice in the mirror before job interviews. "You all know Dana's house, the big one on Brookstone Drive?" She paused like she was waiting for applause. "Well, I sold it. At first, I thought I'd misheard. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My mom gasped, but it wasn't shock, it was excitement. "You sold it? That's wonderful! Finally!" "Yeah," Cynthia continued, glancing at me like she was delivering a mercy killing. "I got an offer for $480,000. Cash." The table erupted in congratulations. My father whistled. "That's a hell of a deal," he said. "About time that property stopped bleeding taxes." I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Every sound in the room seemed too sharp. The clink of glasses, the scrape of a chair, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Cynthia raised her wine glass. "To new beginnings," she said, "and to finally making smart financial choices for the family." I forced my lips to move. "You sold my house?" She blinked like I'd said something inappropriate. "Well, technically, it was still under your name, but you were overseas for months. You weren't even using it. I figured it was time to move on. The market's great right now." My mom nodded in approval. "See, Dana? Cynthia knows how to take initiative." I wanted to laugh. Take initiative? I'd spent years earning that house every deployment, every night in sandstorms, every mission that nearly broke me. I'd bought it in cash after my second tour in Afghanistan, my first real step toward something that was mine. And now, it was gone. Cynthia kept talking, explaining how she handled all the paperwork herself, how the buyer was thrilled, and how the money's already in the account. "Which account?" I asked. "Our joint family account," she said, as if that was the obvious answer. I looked around the table. My dad nodded. My mom smiled. Everyone acted like this was normal. The phone in my pocket started buzzing. I ignored it. Cynthia was still talking, her voice filling every inch of air like perfume. My phone buzzed again, then a third time. Finally, I looked. Unknown number. I stepped away from the table and answered. "Miss Callahan?" A man's voice said, tight and rushed. "This is Special Agent Brooks with the FBI. We need to confirm some details about a recent property sale connected to your name." I turned toward the dining room. Through the glass doors, I could see my family laughing. Cynthia raised her glass again. My father poured more wine. "What property?" I asked. "The house on Brookstone Drive," the agent said. "We have reason to believe documents were forged in the transaction. Are you aware of this sale?" I stared through the glass. Cynthia was holding up a folder now, showing everyone papers, flipping through them like a proud real estate agent. My own name was probably on every one of them. "No," I said slowly. "I didn't authorize any sale." There was silence on the other end. Then, "All right, please remain calm and don't confront anyone yet. We'll be in touch very soon." "Am I in trouble?" I asked. "Not if you didn't sign those documents." I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket, my pulse steadying with a kind of cold focus that only came from combat. My sister was still performing, talking about what she planned to do with her share. My parents were eating dessert like nothing had happened. I walked back into the dining room and sat down. Cynthia looked up from her glass of Merlot. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. "Good," she said, smiling again. "You'll thank me later. This way you can finally focus on your career instead of that empty house." I nodded. "You're probably right." Her smile widened, misreading my calm as surrender. "I always am." No one at that table knew the FBI had just called. No one knew a storm was coming. But I did. and for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. The rest of dinner was background noise. My father asked about my last deployment, half listening to my answers. My mom talked about Cynthia's kids. Cynthia kept circling back to the sale, bragging about how she'd negotiated the price up. She even joked that I should have let her handle my finances years ago. I nodded along, studying her the way I used to study insurgents, across a dusty scope, steady, quiet, patient. She thought she'd won. They all did. When dessert came, my father poured coffee for everyone except me. "You don't take caffeine this late, right?" he said. I smiled faintly. "Guess I've changed." Cynthia looked at me like I'd said something odd, but she didn't press it. The room smelled like roast beef and wine and smugness. I sat there, memorizing every face, every word, every careless laugh. Outside, the street was quiet. Too quiet. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe it was instinct, the same instinct that had kept me alive in war zones. The phone buzzed again. This time, a text. "Maintain normal behavior. Do not alert subjects. Agents en route." I set the phone face down beside my plate and picked up my fork. Cynthia poured herself more wine. "You know, Dana, it's really not a big deal," she said, her voice syrup sweet. "You'll get over it. Family should share everything, right?" I looked up at her, smiled just enough to make her relax, and said, "Yeah, everything." The clock on the wall ticked softly. My mom reached for the bread basket. My dad asked someone to pass the gravy. Cynthia laughed again, tilting her head the same way she always did when she was about to lie. And right then, as she reached for her glass, I heard the low hum of engines outside, growing louder. I didn't move. No one else noticed yet. The headlights flashed through the window. 3 black SUVs. Cynthia kept talking, completely unaware. "See, this is what I've been saying for years, Dana. You just don't think long-term." The knock on the door was firm. Not angry, not polite. Official. Every head turned. My father frowned. "Who the hell?" I pushed back my chair slowly. "I'll get it," I said. And for the first time all evening, Cynthia finally looked nervous. The air outside hit me like cold glass when I opened the door. I didn't even have to say a word. One of the agents held up a badge. Another stepped forward. The house behind me was still full of clinking dishes and laughter that stopped mid-breath. "Special Agent Brooks, FBI," the man said. His tone was all business, like he'd done this 100 times before. "We have questions regarding a property transaction under the name Dana Callahan." My mom's voice cracked behind me. "What's this about?" Cynthia stood up, the color draining from her face. "Wait, what's going on?" Brooks didn't answer. He motioned toward the living room. "We'll talk inside." I stepped aside and let them in. The sound of their boots on the hardwood floor made the entire house feel smaller. My dad looked like he'd been slapped. My mom clutched her pearls like they were a lifeline. Cynthia tried to play it calm. "Look, this must be a mistake," she said, smiling that same fake smile she used on church committees. "We just completed a normal sale. Everything's fine." Brooks didn't blink. "We'll determine that. Where's the documentation?" She hesitated, then pointed toward the dining table, where the papers were still spread out. Her wineglass tipped slightly as she gestured, leaving a red smear on the tablecloth. Another agent began collecting the documents. My father started asking questions no one answered. My mom whispered something about lawyers. I just watched. When Brooks finally turned to me, his tone softened a little. "Ma'am, you're the legal owner of this property?" "Yes," I said. "And you didn't authorize this sale?" "No." He nodded once, then looked at Cynthia. "Then we've got a problem." Cynthia tried to laugh. "Oh, come on, Dana's just confused. She's been overseas." "Maybe she forgot." "She didn't forget," I said quietly. Brooks held up one of the pages. "This signature, did you sign this?" I looked at it. My name was there, but the handwriting was off. The tail of the Y curled wrong. The C in Callahan was too sharp. I shook my head. "That's not mine." For the first time, I saw panic in her eyes. Brooks looked between us, his face unreadable. "Ma'am," he said to Cynthia, "we'll need you to come with us for further questioning." My mom gasped. "You can't just take her." "Yes, ma'am," he said flatly. "We can." Cynthia's voice rose an octave. This is ridiculous. It's a misunderstanding. Dana, tell them. I met her eyes. You should probably go with them. The agents escorted her out while my mom followed, pleading about how this family doesn't do things like that. My father stood frozen, like he couldn't process what was happening in his own home. When the door shut, the house went quiet except for the ticking clock. Brooks stayed behind, lowering his voice. We'll need a formal statement from you tomorrow. Don't leave town. I almost laughed. I just got back from deployment. I'm not going anywhere. He nodded, handed me a card, and left. The silence afterward was heavy enough to choke on. My father finally turned to me. You didn't have to humiliate your sister like that. She forged my name, I said. He shook his head. Families handle things privately. Art. Yeah, I said. And look how well that's worked out for us. He didn't respond. My mom came back inside, mascara smudged, muttering about lawyers and how dare they treat Cynthia like a criminal. I didn't bother answering. When I finally left, the night was sharp and clear. The black SUVs were still parked outside, their lights off but engines running. Cynthia was in the back of one, her head down. For a second, I thought she looked small until she glanced up and glared at me through the glass. That look wasn't confusion. It was hate. Driving home, I realized the house she'd sold wasn't just a building. It was the only place I'd ever bought for myself. Every wall, every nail, every window had been earned the hard way. Combat pay, sleepless nights, one mortgage payment at a time. When I bought it, I didn't need anyone's approval. It was freedom. And Cynthia had taken it like it was a used purse she didn't need anymore. When I got back to my apartment, the first thing I did was pour myself a drink, then another. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. Agent Brooks again, he said. We've confirmed the sale was processed through a fraudulent title company. Your sister forged your signature on at least 3 federal forms. The buyer has already been questioned. Is she going to prison? Too early to say, he replied. But yes, it's serious. I sat down, staring at the wall. I still can't believe she did it. Brooks paused. You'd be surprised how often family is involved in this kind of thing. Yeah, I said quietly. I guess I wouldn't. After he hung up, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Me and Cynthia as kids, matching dresses for Christmas, her arm around me after my first deployment. Back then, I thought she was proud of me. Now I saw something else in every smile, a kind of sharpness I'd missed before. By morning, the news had already hit local media. Suburban woman arrested for real estate fraud. They didn't mention our names, but anyone who knew us would figure it out. My mom called 5 times before noon. I didn't answer. That night, I drove to Brookstone Drive. The house looked the same from the outside, but a different car sat in the driveway, a rental, probably the buyer's temporary vehicle. I parked across the street and sat there, engine running, headlights off. I thought about all the times I'd imagined coming home from deployment to this place. The porch light would be on, the air would smell like pine, and I'd finally get to breathe. Now someone else lived there. I saw movement inside a woman carrying boxes, a man adjusting curtains. I couldn't hate them. They'd bought a dream they didn't know was stolen. A knock on my window made me jump. It was Brooks again, holding a coffee cup. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. Couldn't sleep. He nodded, took a sip, figured as much. You guys ever get used to this? I asked. What, family turning on each other? Yeah. He looked at the house, then back at me. Not really. Every time, it's the same look. Shock. Like they can't believe it happened to them. I glanced at him. Guess I've got that look too. He gave a small, sympathetic shrug. You'll get through it. You've been through worse. War's easier, I said. He smirked. At least there, the enemy wears a uniform. The porch light flicked off, and the new owners disappeared inside. Brooks finished his coffee and headed back to his car. Before he got in, he turned. We'll be in touch, Miss Callahan. Don't worry, paper trails don't lie. I watched his taillights fade into the dark, the hum of his engine blending into the quiet night. The only sound left was the wind moving through the trees, brushing against the roof that wasn't mine anymore. I stayed there until the sky started to lighten, the first gray sliver of dawn crawling over the horizon. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Brooks. It was my mother. The message was short. Cynthia says you set her up. I didn't reply. Instead, I started the car, took one last look at the house, and drove away without turning my headlights on. The message from my mother stayed on my screen while I parked outside the courthouse the next morning. The building looked as gray as the sky above it. No flags waving, no sense of justice glowing from within. Just bureaucracy with windows. Agent Brooks met me near the entrance, holding a file under his arm. "You look better than last night," he said. "Didn't sleep," I replied. He nodded. "That's better than most people in your situation. Come on, we'll go over your statement." And a quote. Inside, everything smelled like printer toner and bad coffee. He led me to a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a half-dead fern. He clicked a pen and slid a form toward me. "Just walk me through what you know." I told him everything from the dinner, to Cynthia's announcement, to the forged signature on the deed. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he flipped through his notes. "She's claiming you gave verbal permission," he said finally. "Verbal permission to commit a federal crime?" He cracked a faint smile. "I didn't say it was a good story." Then he pulled out several photocopies and laid them in front of me. My name was on each one, written just slightly wrong. The spacing was too even, the letters too perfect. "She practiced," I said quietly. "Multiple times, according to the buyer's lawyer," Brooks said. "She came into his office confident. Said you were serving abroad and couldn't sign in person, but you'd authorized her by email. She even brought fake emails printed out as proof." I leaned back. "She went that far?" He nodded. "We traced the emails to an account created 2 days before the sale, same IP address as your parents' house. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it still hit hard. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that she'd done it, or that my parents' Wi-Fi had been part of the crime." Brooks kept talking, outlining how she'd forged financial statements, used my military ID number, and convinced the title company the sale was legitimate. She even deposited the funds into our family trust account, an account I hadn't touched in years because my parents managed it. "She said the money would help pay family debts," Brooks said. "Did you know about any debts?" "Only the moral kind," I said. He didn't laugh. "We'll need access to that account. Can you authorize it?" "Gladly." 11. After the meeting, I sat in my car for a long time. The cold seeped through the windshield, but I didn't start the engine. I just stared at my hands. They were steady, the same hands that had held rifles, patched wounds, written after-action reports, hands that knew how to fix things. But this wasn't something I could fix with discipline or training. By the time I drove home, my phone had 15 missed calls, 5 from my mother, 6 from my father, and the rest from numbers I didn't recognize, probably local reporters. I turned it off. I opened my laptop and started digging. Military discipline had its advantages. I knew how to research, how to follow money, how to connect dots. I pulled up property records, title histories, even county tax receipts. Everything pointed to one thing. My sister had been planning this for months. The first sign was a small payment from her personal account to a consulting service 3 months earlier, $500 labeled as document prep. Then another payment to a notary who'd since moved to Florida. Every trail I followed confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a mistake. It was premeditated. I poured another coffee and kept going. Then I found something that stopped me cold. The fake emails she'd used to confirm my authorization had been CC'd to my parents. Not once, but twice. They couldn't claim ignorance. They'd seen it. My phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it, then saw the name. Dad. I answered. "Dana," he said, voice heavy with forced calm. "We need to talk." "Now you want to talk?" "This family is falling apart," he said. "Cynthia made a mistake, but we can handle this privately. She committed fraud." He sighed. "She's your sister." "Not anymore." End art quote. There was silence on the line for a few seconds. Then the quiet sound of his disappointment, the same tone I'd heard every time I'd done something that didn't fit his idea of family unity. "I hope you realize," he said, "this will destroy her life. She destroyed it herself." He hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about those signatures. The way she'd probably sat at the same table where we used to eat cereal, copying my name over and over until it looked perfect. She'd even used my middle initial. She knew every curve of every letter. That kind of betrayal didn't come from impulse. It came from knowing someone too well. The next morning, Brooks called again. "You'll want to hear this," he said. "We found evidence she transferred part of the money to a joint investment account, one with your parents' names on it." End quote. I didn't say anything. He continued, "If that's true, they might face charges too, but that depends on whether they knew." "They knew," I said flatly. He paused. "You sure?" "I saw the CCs. They read those emails." "Understood," he said. "We'll dig deeper." After we hung up, I stared at the wall until my eyes burned. There's a special kind of silence that comes after betrayal. Not the peaceful kind, but the type that hums under your skin, like something's about to break. Later that day, a letter arrived handwritten, with my mother's perfect cursive on the envelope. Inside, 3 lines. "You've embarrassed this family enough. Withdraw your statement. Cynthia didn't mean harm. No love, no mom, just orders." I folded it once and dropped it in the trash. That night, I couldn't resist driving past my parents' house. All the lights were on. Through the window, I saw my father pacing, my mother talking on the phone, her gestures sharp. A news anchor's voice came faintly through the glass, words like forgery, investigation, federal offense. I rolled down my window just enough to hear my own heartbeat. Then a different sound, my sister's voice. Faint but unmistakable, coming from inside. She wasn't in custody anymore. I sat there, hands gripping the wheel, until she appeared at the front door. Her hair was messy, her face pale, but she smiled when she saw me through the windshield. She lifted her hand and waved. Not a friendly wave, a slow, taunting one. Like she already knew I was still playing defense in a game she'd started months ago. I didn't wave back. Instead, I turned the key, shifted into drive, and let the tires spin just a little too long before catching the road. The sound echoed down the empty street as her wave hung in the rearview mirror, frozen in the glass like a ghost I hadn't learned how to fight yet. The knock on my apartment door came just after sunrise. I hadn't been sleeping much anyway. I opened it to find Brooks standing there again, holding a folder thick enough to break a table leg. "You got a minute?" he asked. I stepped aside. "I assume you brought bad news." "Depends on how you define bad." He sat down at my kitchen table like it belonged to him and spread out a few pages. "Cynthia's lawyer filed a motion this morning claiming she acted under family authority. She's saying you gave her verbal approval before leaving the country. She's painting herself as the victim of a misunderstanding." I poured him coffee without asking. "And the evidence?" "She forged half the documentation, but her attorney's spinning it like she was trying to manage your affairs responsibly." "Yeah, responsible people always steal houses." He smirked slightly. "They're also claiming your military income made you too absent to handle property matters." I leaned on the counter. "So, serving my country now counts as negligence?" He shrugged. "In her lawyer's world, maybe? But here's the kicker, your parents are backing her statement." That landed like a punch. "You're kidding." "I wish I were. They submitted written affidavits saying they believed she had your consent. If they hold to that story, they might dodge charges." I stared out the window. The city was waking up, cars humming, dogs barking, people going about their day as if justice wasn't something you had to wrestle for. Brooks flipped a page. "We found transfers. Your sister moved part of the money into your father's investment account. He cashed out last week." I turned back to him. "They're in this together." He didn't answer, which said enough. I sat down across from him. "What happens next?" He closed the folder. "We keep building the case. Fraud's easy to prove if people get greedy. They always leave fingerprints, bank statements, texts, careless words. It's just a matter of time." He stood up. "You should lay low. Keep working with us. Don't contact them directly." "I won't," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. After he left, I looked around my apartment. It wasn't much, just a rental near the base with furniture that didn't match, but it was mine. For now, my real home, the one Cynthia had sold, was just a file number in an investigation. I opened my laptop again and scrolled through old photos of the house. The wide porch I'd rebuilt myself, the oak floors that creaked in just the right spots, the small garden where I'd tried and failed to grow tomatoes. Every image looked like proof of something I'd lost. By noon, I gave in to impulse and drove to see it again. The buyers, an older couple, were outside, trimming bushes. I parked down the street and walked up slowly, hands in my jacket pockets. The man straightened up first, friendly but cautious. "Can I help you?" he asked. I introduced myself. "I used to live here." His expression softened. "Oh, you're Dana. We heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. We had no idea the sale was fake." His wife came out, drying her hands on a towel. "We tried to cancel when the agents told us, but our lawyers said we had to wait for official direction." "Dick." "It's okay," I said. "None of this is your fault." They invited me to step onto the porch. It felt strange, standing there like a guest in my own memory. The man nodded toward the view. "Beautiful property. You took good care of it." I smiled faintly. "I tried." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you want to come inside? You should see it. It's still just like you left it." For a moment, I almost said yes. But then I saw the fresh welcome mat, the flower pot by the door that wasn't mine, and I realized stepping inside would just make it worse. "No," I said. "It's yours now. I just needed to see it once more." They looked guilty, which made it worse, so I thanked them and walked back to the car. On the way home, my mother called again. This time I picked up. "Dana," she said immediately, her tone clipped. "We need to fix this mess before it ruins us all." "That ruins us? Your sister is distraught. You're making her out to be some kind of criminal." "She forged federal documents, Mom. She made a mistake. You've made mistakes too. Remember when you crashed Dad's car in high school? We didn't call the police then." I laughed. "Selling a house with forged signatures isn't exactly a fender bender." "You're being cruel," she snapped. "You've changed since the military. You're cold." "That. I learned not to ignore danger just because it shares my last name." She hung up after that. By evening, I got an email from Brooks attached, were new findings. Cynthia had contacted the buyers again after her release, trying to convince them to sign a clarification document that would make her look innocent. The buyers refused, but she'd left a voicemail begging them to help me undo this before my sister ruins my life. I listened to the audio clip 3 times. Her voice sounded almost pitiful almost. Then it shifted halfway through, her tone sharpening. "She always thought she was better than us. Maybe now she'll see what happens when you treat family like enemies." It wasn't guilt. It was resentment, pure and clean. I closed the laptop and sat in silence until the room dimmed. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space like static. Somewhere in that noise, something clicked for me. Cynthia hadn't just done this for money. She wanted to punish me. For leaving, for succeeding, for being everything she wasn't. The next day, Brooks called again. "We've got a warrant to search your parents' financial records," he said. "Turns out there's more than one suspicious transfer." "Meaning?" "Meaning your dad's been moving money through shell accounts under your mom's maiden name. It's small amounts, but consistent. We're checking if it's connected to Cynthia's deal." I rubbed my temples. "So it's a family business now." "And seems that way." That night, I didn't go home. I drove to the edge of town where the base training grounds met the forest. I parked, stepped out, and just walked into the trees until I couldn't see the road anymore. The air was cold enough to sting, but it cleared my head. I'd spent years in war zones surrounded by people who wanted to kill me. I'd never expected to feel more betrayed sitting in my hometown. When I got back to the car, a text waited from an unknown number. "You think you're the hero here, but you've ruined everything. You'll regret this." I didn't need to check who it was from. I locked the screen, started the engine, and drove until I saw the city lights disappear in my rearview mirror. The next morning started like any other coffee, silence, and a kitchen that still smelled faintly of last night's frustration. But the knock on the door was different this time. Quieter, measured. When I opened it, Brooks wasn't alone. 2 other agents stood behind him, each holding a laptop bag, and that particular look of people who already knew too much. "Morning, Miss Callahan," Brooks said. "We're setting up a temporary command post. You okay with that?" "Sure," I said. "Just keep the coffee pot full." They stepped in and immediately turned my dining table into a federal operations hub. Wires, folders, coffee cups, it looked like an organized mess, which apparently was how justice worked. Brooks sat across from me and tapped his pen. "You ready to help us connect the dots?" "I've got nothing else to do," I said. He slid a document toward me. "These are financial transactions tied to your family's accounts. Notice anything off?" It took me less than a minute. "This one," I said, pointing at a transfer labeled Consulting Services LLC. That's not real. He nodded. You're right. We traced it to an unregistered business Cynthia created 2 months before the sale. It funneled small payments from the house's escrow account. So she stole money before she even sold the place. Looks that way, Brooks said. Classic pattern, test the system first, then go big when no one notices. The other agents listened silently, typing notes. Every keystroke sounded like confirmation that my family wasn't just dysfunctional, they were organized. Brooks leaned back. Tell me something. Has your sister ever done anything like this before? Not legally, I said. But she's always been strategic. When we were kids, she used to fake being sick to skip school, then sell my homework answers to other students. She figured out manipulation before she learned algebra. He smiled faintly. She didn't grow out of it. I stared at the printed spreadsheet. Each number another nail in the coffin of whatever was left of our family name. How long until she's charged? Soon, he said. But it's not just her anymore. We think your parents helped conceal funds. Your father's investment accounts show transfers from your sister's fake company. My chest tightened. So they knew everything. Brooks didn't look surprised. They knew enough. I leaned back in my chair. You ever deal with families like mine before? He raised an eyebrow. All the time. Usually it's about inheritance or real estate. Greed makes blood irrelevant. I let out a dry laugh. I spent years fighting people who wanted to kill me. Turns out I should have been watching the ones who wanted to help me. He didn't respond, but one of the younger agents, a woman with short hair and a sharp tone, looked up from her laptop. For what it's worth, you're handling this better than most victims. I've been trained for chaos, I said. This is just a different battlefield. By noon, the team had gathered enough evidence to file an extension on the investigation. They'd found forged emails, fake invoices, even a notarized letter claiming I was transferring property management rights to my sister. The notary had gone missing, but the signature matched one from a mortgage scam case in Texas. Brooks stood, stretching his back. We'll take this to the district office. You might want to stay somewhere else tonight just in case the family tries to make contact. End quote. I looked at him. You think they'd show up? I think people who are desperate do dumb things. He wasn't wrong. That evening, as the agents packed up, I noticed a small folder left on the table. You forgot this, I said. Brooks turned, saw it, and hesitated. That's for you. Inside was a printed statement from my sister, written during her brief detention. It wasn't addressed to me directly, but every line dripped with venom that couldn't have been for anyone else. I was trying to protect what's ours. Dana never understood family. She only cares about herself, her career, her medals. I did what she wouldn't, took responsibility. Maybe she should thank me. I closed the folder. Protecting family by committing fraud. That's new. Brooks gave a small shrug. She's rationalizing. Happens every time. After they left, I sat alone at the table, the folder still in front of me. For years, my sister had been the favorite, the one who stayed close, who attended every Sunday dinner, who played the perfect daughter. I'd been the ghost, the one who left for deployments and came home too quiet, too serious. My parents called me the soldier, like it was a warning label. I'd thought distance protected me. Turns out it just made me easier to rob. Around midnight, I got another text. This time from an unknown number with no name attached. You don't get it. You're destroying your own bloodline. Stop before it's too late. I stared at the screen, then typed back. Too late already. No reply. The next morning I found my car keyed. Deep, deliberate scratches running across both doors. No note, no witnesses, but I didn't need any. It wasn't random. I called Brooks. Someone vandalized my car. Family? Who else? He sighed. All right, I'll send a team to check security cameras. And a trapdoor. As I waited for them, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. I looked more like my old self from deployment, tight jaw, guarded eyes, the face of someone expecting incoming fire. The agents arrived within the hour. They reviewed the building's security footage, and sure enough, there she was, Cynthia. In a hoodie, late at night, moving fast. She looked right into the camera once, her expression blank. Brooks shook his head. She's spiraling. She's escalating. I corrected. He agreed. We'll document it. Adds to the harassment charges. For the rest of the day, I kept busy. I went for a run. I cleaned the apartment. I even went to the grocery store, pretending I wasn't being watched. But every sound, a car door slamming, a phone vibrating, footsteps in the hall felt heavier. That evening, I sat by the window again. The same spot where I'd first seen the agents arrive days ago. The street below was quiet, suburban, harmless looking. But I knew better now. Normal didn't mean safe. I thought about something Brooks had said earlier, that greed makes blood irrelevant. Maybe that was true. But part of me suspected this wasn't just about money anymore. My sister wanted me broken, publicly and completely. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, letting my eyes adjust to the faint glow from the street lamps. Somewhere, an engine idled too long, then faded away. It didn't matter. I'd learned to wait things out. In war, patience was survival. Here, it would have to be justice. When the clock hit midnight, the phone lit up again, this time with a name I recognized. Dad. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it buzzed again, this time with a voicemail. I didn't play it right away. I sat there, staring at the phone until the glow faded. Finally, I hit play. His voice came through, low and tense. Dana, you don't know what you've started. The FBI isn't your friend. They're going to ruin all of us. You need to stop cooperating before you regret it. The message ended with silence. I replayed it once, then deleted it. Outside, the first morning light started to creep across the horizon, painting the city in dull gray. I watched it quietly, not because it was beautiful, but because it meant another night had passed without breaking. The voicemail kept replaying in my head long after I'd deleted it. My father's voice didn't sound angry, it sounded scared. But not for me, for himself. That told me everything I needed to know about where his loyalties lay. The next day, I didn't answer a single call. Not Brooks, not my parents, not the unknown numbers that kept popping up with fake area codes. I turned off my phone, stuffed it in a drawer, and decided to take the one thing the military had drilled into me since day one: control what you can, ignore the noise. I went back to the gym on base for the first time since returning home. The same smell of metal and sweat. The same playlist of angry rock music. But even in that familiar noise, I could feel eyes on me. 2 soldiers from my old unit stopped mid-rep when I walked by. One whispered something to the other and smirked. By the time I finished my set, the base rumor mill had probably already connected the dots. Captain Callahan's family's under FBI investigation. Military gossip traveled faster than bullets. I kept my head down and left. When I got to the parking lot, someone had left a folded note under my windshield wiper. I unfolded it carefully, half expecting another threat. Instead, it said only 3 words in black marker: loyalty is everything. No signature. I took a photo and sent it to Brooks with the caption, "This is getting old." He texted back a minute later, "Stay alert. We're monitoring communications from your parents' house. They've been talking to someone we can't identify." That didn't surprise me. My family had a way of turning secrecy into an art form. Back home, I made dinner and tried to pretend normal still existed. Pasta, TV, nothing exciting. But when I went to throw out the trash, I noticed the smell first burnt paper. I followed it to the dumpster behind my building. Someone had dumped a pile of half-burned documents, bank statements, photocopies, legal letters. Some pages were intact enough to read. One had my name on it. It was from a lawyer representing my family's trust. The date was 2 weeks old, and it mentioned a planned reassignment of property titles to the surviving beneficiaries of the Whitlock estate. That meant one thing. They'd tried to write me out completely. I called Brooks. He answered on the second ring. "Talk to me. I just found burned documents behind my building. They're connected to the trust. Send photos." I did. He was silent for a few seconds, probably reading them. Then, "We've got a leak. Someone from the family's destroying evidence. I'll send a team." When he hung up, I sat on the curb and waited. The smell of ash clung to my clothes. When the unmarked car arrived, 2 agents in gloves collected the papers. Brooks wasn't with them this time, but one agent handed me an evidence form to sign. "You're lucky you found these before sanitation pickup," she said. Lucky isn't the word I'd use. She gave a quick half smile. "We'll let you know what's recoverable." And a 6. The next morning, Brooks called again. "Good catch last night," he said. Those weren't random. We traced them back to your sister's printer. She's been trying to rewrite legal history. Any idea why dump them behind my building? Maybe to send a message. Maybe she panicked. I laughed under my breath. Cynthia doesn't panic. She plans. Then she's planning something, he said. That day, I kept my curtains closed. Every time a car slowed near the building, I tensed. Every knock on a neighbor's door made me listen harder. Sleep came in short bursts, 20 minutes here, half an hour there. The dreams were the worst. Not war, not sandstorms, not the usual nightmares. Just my sister at the dinner table, smiling like she always did before a lie. By the third day, Brooks called again. We've got new intel, he said. Your sister met with an attorney who specializes in asset recovery. She's trying to sue the buyer of your house, claiming she was the one defrauded. She's suing them? Yep. Claims she was misled by you and coerced into selling. I almost laughed. So she's the victim now. She's rewriting the script. Happens all the time. But don't worry, we've got the receipts. I didn't doubt him, but I also knew how public perception worked. All it took was one well-placed story, one photo, one edited quote to turn the truth upside down. Sure enough, 2 days later, a local news article popped up online. Army captain accused of betraying sister in real estate scandal. No sources, no evidence, just anonymous family friends. I scrolled through the comments. Greedy soldier rounds family. Bet she's using PTSD as an excuse. Imagine betraying your own sister like that. I didn't realize how tight my jaw was until I felt my teeth ache. I sent the link to Brooks. He called 5 minutes later. We're aware, he said. We're tracking the IP that posted the story. It routes back to an anonymous PR firm in Georgia. Guess who hired them? Cynthia, I said flatly. Bingo. He sighed. She's getting desperate. This is her version of counterattack. Let her talk, I said. The truth doesn't need PR. Maybe not, he said, but public opinion can taint a case. Keep your head down. I ended the call and looked around my apartment. Every photo, every award on the wall, suddenly felt like evidence in a trial I didn't start. I decided to get out for a while. I drove with no destination, just needed the motion. The highway blurred into farmland, the radio static filling the silence. Eventually, I ended up at a small diner on the outskirts of town. The waitress poured coffee without asking questions. Rough day? She asked. Something like that. She smiled. You look like someone who doesn't lose easily. I-tech. Depends on what's being lost. When I left, the air outside was cool and dry. The kind that felt clean enough to make you forget things for a few minutes. But as I reached my car, I noticed something wedged under the wiper again. A business card. Black and unmarked except for one sentence on the back. You don't belong here anymore. I looked around the parking lot. Empty. The card was thick paper, expensive. No prints. I slid it into my pocket and got in the car. That night, Brooks showed up unannounced. We traced that card, he said. High-end print shop, paid in cash. Ordered by someone under a fake name, but the handwriting on the order form matches your sister's. I didn't even react. Of course it does. He studied me for a moment. You're calm. I'm trained to be. Yeah, he said quietly. But this isn't a battlefield. It is for her, I said. He didn't argue. He just nodded once and glanced toward the window. The street outside was empty again, but the air carried a pressure like the pause before something heavy falls. He picked up his coat. We're closing in. Just stay steady. She'll make a mistake soon. I walked him to the door. She already did, I said. He frowned. What's that? She underestimated me. After he left, I locked the door, double-checked the windows, and sat in the dark. I didn't feel anger anymore, just focus. The kind you get when you realize survival and justice might be the same thing. Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere, a car door slammed. Then nothing. The kind of silence that makes you think the world's holding its breath. The call came in the middle of the afternoon. Brooks didn't bother with greetings anymore. Your mother invited you to dinner tonight, right? I glanced at the unopened text on my phone. Yeah. She called it a family peace talk, which usually means an ambush. Ard, go, he said. We need you there. Excuse me? He exhaled. We've been tracking communications between your sister and a financial contact in Houston. We think she's still moving money. She doesn't know we have surveillance on her, and tonight might be her next handoff. So you want me to walk into a trap? I said flatly. Think of it as bait with backup. We'll be nearby. You just need to keep her talking. Ender. I stared at the wall, my reflection in the TV screen looking more like a soldier than a sister. Fine, I said. But if I get hit with another salad fork, I'm billing the Bureau for emotional damage. That earned the closest thing Brooks ever gave to a laugh. We'll be in the van outside. You know the drill act normal. Normal's not in our family vocabulary. When I pulled up to my parents' house that evening, the sky had turned the color of bruised steel. The same front porch light glowed warm, like nothing had ever happened. For a second, I just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel. Then I got out. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and guilt. My mother greeted me with a smile so brittle it could have cracked. Dana, you made it. How wonderful. Sure, I said. I couldn't resist the promise of forced reconciliation. She flinched but didn't respond. My father sat at the table, half through a glass of whiskey. He looked tired, but not guilty, just inconvenienced. Cynthia appeared from the kitchen, wearing a soft pink sweater, as if dressing like innocence could erase criminal records. Hey sis, she said lightly. Glad you came. I'm under orders, I said. She tilted her head. From who? You don't want to know. She laughed too quickly, too high-pitched, and gestured toward the table. Let's eat. Saturday. My seat was the same one from the night she'd confessed to selling my house. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dinner started in silence. Forks, knives, the faint hum of the refrigerator. My mother tried small talk about the weather. My father mumbled something about the news. No one looked comfortable. Then Cynthia broke the quiet. So, she said, cutting her chicken delicately, have you thought about what this investigation is doing to all of us? I looked at her. I've thought about what you did. That's enough thinking for one family. She sighed dramatically. You're making it sound like I murdered someone. I was trying to fix a financial mess. You left, remember? Someone had to take charge. I leaned back. By forging my name? By stealing $500,000? Her jaw tightened. You always exaggerate. Right, I said. The FBI loves my imagination. My father slammed his fork down. Enough. This family has been torn apart because neither of you knows how to forgive. I turned to him. Forgiveness isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. And, he pointed at me. You think you're so righteous because you wear a uniform, but you've forgotten what it means to be loyal. Loyal. That word again. It was the family's favorite weapon, always aimed at whoever refused to lie for them. Cynthia leaned forward, lowering her voice. You think you're better than us, don't you? You come home with your medals, your perfect posture, and your government friends. But you're just a soldier with no war left to fight, so you turned on your own blood. Crisis. I stared at her long enough for the silence to stretch. Then I said quietly, I didn't turn on my family. My family turned into something I don't recognize. Her face went still. My mother stood up abruptly, muttering something about dessert, probably hoping sugar could fix perjury. Brooks's words echoed in my mind. Keep her talking. So I did. Tell me, Cynthia, I said casually. What's it like stealing money and still sleeping at night? She smiled thinly. Funny question from someone who kills for a living. My father slammed his hand on the table. That's enough. But Cynthia kept going. You think you're better because you follow orders? I followed orders too. From Dad. From Mom. From everyone who actually stayed and cared. You left. I could feel the heat rising, but I stayed calm. You didn't sell that house for family. You sold it for yourself. Her eyes narrowed. You don't know anything. End quote. Then explain the offshore account in your name, I said. She froze. My father's head snapped toward her. What account? Her fork slipped, clattering against the plate. That's nothing, just savings. I smiled slowly. Savings under the name Whitlock Holdings? Registered in the Cayman Islands? My mother returned from the kitchen holding a pie, her face pale. What's going on? Cynthia glared at me. You bugged my computer. I didn't have to, I said. You emailed yourself a receipt. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. That's when the knock hit the door. 3 times. Firm, even. My father frowned. Who the hell? I didn't move. You should probably answer that. He walked toward the door, muttering. When he opened it, Brooks stood there with 2 agents, badges visible. Evening, Mr. Whitlock, Brooks said politely. We have a warrant. No. The next few seconds moved in fragments, my mother gasping, my father protesting, Cynthia shooting up from her chair. This is ridiculous, she shouted. You can't just barge in here. Brooks stepped inside. We can, actually. You're under arrest for fraud, obstruction, and tampering with federal evidence. Cynthia backed away. You have no proof. Your offshore account says otherwise, Brooks replied. And before you say it, yes, we have the documents. Her face went white. My father tried to intervene. You don't understand, she was trying to fix things. Brooks looked at him. Sir, she wasn't fixing anything. She was laundering stolen assets. The air went still. The smell of dinner turned sour. Cynthia shook her head, tears welling up now. You can't do this, Dana. You can't let them take me. I didn't answer. Brooks read her rights while the other agents cuffed her. My mother whispered prayers under her breath, hands trembling. My father just stood there, staring at nothing. As they led Cynthia toward the door, she turned back. Her voice cracked, but the venom was still there. You think this makes you a hero? You'll regret it. I watched her step outside, into the cold air, where blue and red lights bounced across the street. Brooks gave me a brief nod as he followed her out. The house was quiet again, except for my mother's soft sobs. My father poured another whiskey. Are you happy now? He said bitterly. I looked at him, really looked, and realized he didn't see me anymore. To him, I'd stopped being a daughter the moment I stopped being obedient. I picked up my coat and headed for the door. Where are you going? My mother asked. Home, I said. My father's voice followed me, tired and small. You don't have one anymore. I paused at the door, looked back once and said, Not yet. Then I walked out into the cold night, where the flashing lights painted everything blue. The cold hit harder once the front door shut behind me. The night smelled like rain and exhaust, a mix that always reminded me of long deployments, moments when everything seemed quiet before it exploded again. I stood on the driveway, watching the agents load Cynthia into the back of a government SUV. Her pink sweater looked ridiculous under the flashing lights. She kept twisting her wrists against the cuffs, muttering something I couldn't hear. Brooks walked over. You all right? I've had worse family dinners, I said. He gave a faint nod. We'll take her downtown. She'll be processed tonight, arraignment in the morning. You might want to avoid the press. They're already circling. Of course they are. As the car pulled away, my father stepped outside, his drink still in his hand. He didn't look angry anymore, just hollow. You called them, didn't you? I met his eyes. They already knew. I just didn't stop them. End quote. He laughed once, bitter and short. You always had to win. This isn't winning, I said. It's surviving. He turned away, muttering something about loyalty, and went back inside, shutting the door behind him. The sound was final, in a way words couldn't be. Brooks was still standing beside me. You don't have to go through the rest alone, he said. We've got victim support resources. I don't need counseling, I said. I meant protection, he replied. Your parents are being questioned next. Once that happens, things might get loud. I nodded. Loud I can handle. He gave a small half-smile. That's what I figured. The agents cleared out one by one, until the only thing left was the fading pulse of red light reflecting off the windows. I walked down the street to my car, each step echoing on the wet pavement. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere else, a window shade dropped. Suburbia was back to pretending everything was fine. When I got in the car, I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, watching the house. My childhood home. Same white shutters, same porch swing, same maple tree we used to climb. It looked exactly the same, but I knew something had changed permanently inside. By the time I got back to my apartment, the story had already broken on local news. A grainy shot of Cynthia being escorted by agents filled the TV screen. The headline read, Local woman arrested in federal property fraud scheme. End of chap. No mention of me, at least not yet. The anchor spoke with that practiced sympathy TV reporters use when they're secretly thrilled to have something juicy to talk about. Sources close to the investigation confirmed that the suspect's sister, a decorated Army logistics officer, assisted federal agents in the case. There it was. I turned off the TV. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Dana? The voice was low, hoarse. Cynthia. You think you've won something? You ruined everything. You did that yourself, I said. You always loved being the hero, she hissed. The soldier, the savior, the perfect daughter. You don't even realize what they'll do to you next. You think the FBI's on your side? They're using you. Good night, Cynthia. Don't hang up. You'll regret. I hung up. A few seconds later, a text came through from the same number. You're not safe either. I took a screenshot and sent it to Brooks. He called within 30 seconds. She contacted you? Yeah. Same number as before. He sighed. She's angry. Don't engage. We'll flag the call. She's being moved to federal holding tonight, so that'll stop soon. Good, I said. I've had enough ghost stories for 1 week. After that, the apartment felt heavier, like the air itself had thickened with everything unspoken. I opened a window, but it didn't help. The city noise drifted in sirens, car horns, laughter from somewhere far away. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold before I even tasted it. My mind kept replaying that last look Cynthia gave me before the agents took her away. It wasn't fear, it was calculation. The kind of look a cornered person gives when they're already thinking of the next move. The next day, the phone calls started. Reporters, bloggers, even someone claiming to be from a documentary crew. I ignored all of them. Brooks texted updates instead. Parents cooperating. Funds frozen. Buyer cleared. You'll get your house back once restitution is processed. It sounded simple in writing. It wasn't. That evening, I drove to a quiet spot overlooking the bay. The water was calm, the sky low and gray. I'd used to come here after deployments, just to remind myself the world could still be peaceful. I thought about what Brooks said about protection, about things getting loud. He was right. The noise wasn't just external anymore, it was inside my own head. When I got back, my voicemail light was blinking again. One message. It was my mother this time. Dana, they took your sister away like she was a criminal. How could you let that happen? She's family. Blood matters more than mistakes. I hit delete before she finished the sentence. The next morning, Brooks called again. His tone was sharper this time. We've got an issue. Cynthia's been moved to federal custody, but her statement during processing implicated your parents. They'll be charged next. I closed my eyes. So it's official. The whole family's in the system. Pretty much, he said. They'll try to plea out. She's already negotiating for a reduced sentence. By blaming them? By blaming everyone, he said. Including you, if it helps her. I laughed without humor. She's consistent, I'll give her that. Just keep your head down, he said. The truth's on your side. After we hung up, I looked around my apartment again, bare walls, no decorations, no family photos. I realized I'd stopped keeping reminders years ago, probably for this exact reason. The following week blurred into one long routine of interviews, paperwork, and sleepless nights. The FBI wrapped up its report, the media found a new scandal, and the town went back to pretending none of it had happened. But my parents didn't call again. Not once. One afternoon, I got an official letter from the Department of Justice. Property title restored to Dana Callahan. Restitution pending federal ruling. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It felt like paperwork attached to a void. That night, Brooks stopped by unannounced again. We did it, he said simply. Did we? I asked. He looked around my empty apartment. Yeah, it doesn't feel like much, does it? Feels like winning a war by yourself, I said. He nodded slowly. Sometimes that's the only way anyone wins. He left after that, leaving the door half open. I closed it quietly and stood there for a while, hand on the doorknob, listening to the hum of the fridge, the faint city noise outside, and my own steady breathing. I went to the window and looked out over the street. Across the way, a neighbor's porch light flickered, the same way mine used to at my old house. For a moment, I could almost smell the pine trees, hear the creak of the floorboards. Then my phone buzzed again, a restricted number. Against every bit of good sense, I answered. A pause, then Cynthia's voice low and hoarse. You think it's over, don't you? I didn't reply. She laughed quietly. It never is. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long time before setting it face down on the table. The silence that followed didn't feel empty, it felt earned. The next morning started like nothing had changed. Coffee, shower, inbox full of junk, but the world outside had already decided what I was supposed to be: a whistleblower, a hero, or depending on which headline you clicked, a backstabbing sister who destroyed her family for revenge. I stopped reading the news after the third article called me a cold-blooded soldier with no loyalty. It was easier to let the media chew on their own version of the story than waste time correcting people who didn't want the truth. The FBI had already taken over my sister's accounts, and with each new file Brooks sent me, I saw the same pattern: greed disguised as family management. Offshore wires, forged emails, fake signatures, loans taken in my name. It wasn't one impulsive act, it was a business model. At some point, I realized Cynthia had turned family trust into an income stream. She'd been borrowing against assets she didn't own, flipping investments through shell companies, using my military ID as authentication when she needed proof of connection. That was how she'd forged the cabin sale to begin with. She didn't just betray me, she industrialized it. The DOJ called me twice that week for follow-ups. Their tone was polite, but the questions were surgical. Did I ever suspect fraud before? Had I knowingly benefited from shared funds? Did I ever authorize her to manage my property? Each time, my answers were the same. No, absolutely not. Brooks said they had to ask, it was standard protocol. But I could hear the subtext. Once your family's in it this deep, we double-check everyone. Fair enough. My father's face appeared on the news 2 days later. He and my mother were walking out of the courthouse, cameras flashing. My mother clutched her purse like a lifeline. He stared at the ground, lips pressed into a flat line. The reporter shouted questions. "Mr. Whitlock, did you know your daughter was falsifying documents?" He said nothing. My mother's answer came in the form of tears, carefully timed, camera-ready. She'd always been good at optics. By evening, their lawyer issued a statement. The Whitlocks are victims of manipulation. They trusted their eldest daughter and were unaware of her illegal activities. Translation: throw Cynthia under the bus to save themselves. Brooks texted me, "Classic move. They're trying to isolate her. She'll retaliate." And she did. 3 days later, Cynthia's defense filed an affidavit claiming she'd acted under emotional coercion from me. She painted herself as a victim of my military conditioning, alleging that I had intimidated her into handling finances because I was too detached to manage emotional or domestic responsibilities. I read it twice, then laughed. Emotional coercion. She really was creative. Brooks wasn't amused. She's gambling on sympathy. Doesn't matter if it's absurd if she can confuse the jury. That's leverage for a plea deal. She's turning the courtroom into a stage, I said. Yeah, he replied. And you're her favorite villain. The court date came faster than I expected. Federal cases move slow, but the government wanted this one wrapped before election season. Public corruption cases look bad on the annual reports. Walking into the courthouse felt surreal. The last time I'd been in a room that quiet, it had been a briefing overseas. Same tension, same contained threat. Except this time, everyone was wearing suits instead of uniforms. Cynthia sat across the aisle in a gray blazer, her hair tied back like a news anchor. No cuffs, just confidence. She turned her head slightly when she noticed me. That smirk was still there, less defiant now, more hollow. Her lawyer stood up first, delivering a polished opening statement about family miscommunication, shared assets, and a tragic misunderstanding fueled by financial stress. Then the prosecution spoke. No theatrics, just evidence. Screens lit up with emails, bank records, voice messages, my name on documents I'd never seen, signatures that looked like mine, but sharper, colder. The defense kept objecting, but the paper trail didn't care. When it was my turn to testify, the courtroom hushed. The prosecutor asked the basics: rank, service, timeline. Then he asked about the house, about my sister, about trust. I answered calmly. No dramatics, just the truth. How Cynthia had always wanted control. How she'd seen my military deployments as opportunities. How she'd weaponized family ties. At one point, her lawyer interrupted. Would you say your time in the army made you less empathetic toward your sister's situation? I looked straight at him. My time in the army taught me the difference between mistakes and missions. What she did wasn't a mistake. Even the stenographer paused. Cynthia didn't look at me again after that. The prosecution closed with a single line that stuck with me. This case isn't about money, it's about entitlement. The belief that family loyalty excuses theft. When the judge called for recess, Brooks caught my eye from the back of the room. His nod said, "Everything solid testimony, airtight evidence." Outside, cameras waited like vultures. I ignored the questions and walked straight to my car. Inside, my hands shook for the first time in months. Not from nerves, but from exhaustion. 6 years of pretending, surviving, forgiving, and it all came down to a courtroom with bad lighting. The verdict came 2 weeks later. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, forgery, obstruction. 4 years in federal prison. Restitution of $480,000. The judge didn't waste words. This case demonstrates that betrayal within a family can be as damaging as any external crime. Justice applies even at the dinner table. I watched Cynthia's expression flicker between disbelief and fury. No tears this time. Just that same calculation fading under fluorescent light. When they led her away, she turned once, eyes meeting mine. No words. Just a silent accusation like I gave you life, and you gave me prison. I didn't look away. Outside, reporters swarmed again. Brooks handled them while I slipped through a side exit. The air was heavy with heat, the kind that made the sky shimmer. I walked across the courthouse steps and kept going until the sound of cameras disappeared. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table again. Same mug, same silence. The weight of it all didn't hit me until sunrise. Not relief, not guilt, just the hollow kind of quiet that follows when the noise finally stops. Around 9 a.m., Brooks called. "It's over," he said simply. "Is it?" He hesitated. "For now." Then he cleared his throat. "The restitution process starts next week. You'll get the title paperwork in the mail. You can finally go home." "And all home," I repeated, the word strange on my tongue. He didn't push. "Take some time off, Dana. You've earned it." After he hung up, I sat in that same silence for another hour before finally standing. I looked around the apartment, bare walls, unpacked boxes, the life of someone who never really planned to stay anywhere. Maybe going home didn't mean returning to the past. Maybe it just meant not running from it anymore. So I grabbed my keys, stepped outside, and started the drive back toward the property I hadn't seen since the night my sister sold it out from under me. The road stretched ahead, straight and empty, the morning sun cutting through the haze. For the first time in months, there was no weight on my chest. Just air, steady and clean. The drive back to the property felt like retracing someone else's life. The further I got from the city, the more the landscape softened open fields, old barns, faded gas stations that hadn't updated prices since the early 2000s. Somewhere between the third coffee stop and the turnoff onto the county road, I realized I hadn't thought about the army once all morning. For the first time, my head wasn't filled with tactical plans or family debris, just the sound of the tires and the steady rhythm of breathing that didn't feel forced. When the dirt road came into view, I almost didn't recognize it. The gate had been replaced with a new steel one, courtesy of the restitution funds, and a fresh mailbox stood beside it, my name engraved cleanly across the top, D. Callahan. The moment I stepped out, the quiet hit me like a memory. Pine needles underfoot, air so sharp it felt sterilized. The porch looked stronger too. Someone had rebuilt the steps, replaced the deck railing, repainted the siding. It was strange to see my sanctuary restored, not by choice, but by consequence. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of new wood and paint. Government contractors had done a full overhaul, new fixtures, updated wiring, even reinforced windows. Everything gleamed like a version of the past, scrubbed clean. There was a folder on the kitchen counter labeled Restoration Completion Certificate. A note on top, handwritten in neat block letters. "Enjoy the peace you earned, A.H. Nout." Brooks never signed his name, but the initials were enough. I opened the back door and stepped out onto the deck. The pond shimmered in the afternoon light. I could almost hear echoes of that last argument with Cynthia, the same spot where I used to sit alone on weekends, trying to remember who I was before everyone told me who to be. My phone buzzed, interrupting the quiet. It was Brooks again. "Just checking you made it there," he said. "I did," I said. "It's intact." "Good. I figured you'd want to see what you fought for before the restitution hearing next week." I frowned. "Restitution hearing?" "Yeah. Your sister filed an appeal. Wants to reduce her sentence, maybe even restitution amounts." "On what grounds?" "Cooperation with investigators," he said, reading off a note, "which basically means she gave up everything she could about your parents' finances." I rubbed my temples. "She's never going to stop trading other people for freedom, is she?" Brooks chuckled. "Probably not. But don't worry, the judge has seen her type before. You won't have to testify again." "Good," I said, "because I've got nothing left to say." After he hung up, I stood there, letting the wind carry the quiet again. The military taught me 100 ways to fight, but none of them prepared me for winning. Winning felt too much like surviving necessary, but hollow. The next week, I showed up to the restitution hearing anyway. I told Brooks I wanted to see it through. He didn't argue. The courthouse looked smaller this time, almost mundane. The same judge presided, same beige walls, same stiff chairs. But Cynthia looked different. Prison had scraped off the last of her polish. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front this time instead of behind. Her lawyer made one last plea. "My client has demonstrated full cooperation and has expressed remorse. We request leniency on restitution and sentence adjustment." The judge didn't even look up from her notes. "Remorse is an action, not a statement," she said flatly. "Request denied." Cynthia flinched, but said nothing. The judge continued, "Restitution to remain at $480,000. Sentence remains 4 years, with eligibility for parole review after 36 months, contingent upon good behavior." The gavel came down like punctuation, not drama. Case closed. When the guard stood to escort her out, Cynthia glanced my way. Her voice was quiet but sharp enough to carry. "You think this makes you clean? You think you're better than us?" I didn't move. "No," I said, "just done." Her jaw twitched, but she didn't answer. The guards led her through the side door, and the sound of the latch echoed louder than the gavel had. Afterward, I met Brooks on the courthouse steps. He handed me a small envelope. "Final paperwork. Official transfer of restitution funds. It's over now." I tucked it into my coat. "You keep saying that." He shrugged. "Force of habit. But yeah, this time it might actually be true." We walked down the steps together. He asked if I'd ever consider consulting for the Bureau. "We could use someone who doesn't scare easily," he said. "Tempting," I replied. "But I think I've had enough federal drama for one lifetime." He smiled. "Can't argue with that." As I drove back toward the cabin, I passed the same diner where I'd stopped weeks earlier during the investigation. The same waitress was outside on a smoke break. She waved when she recognized me. I parked and walked over. "Well, look who's back," she said. "You look lighter." "Maybe I am," I said. "Maybe gravity finally picked a new victim." She laughed and handed me a coffee to go. "On the house. You look like someone who deserves a quiet day." "Thanks," I said, meaning it. Back on the road, the sun started dipping low, washing everything in gold. I didn't realize until then that I'd stopped checking my mirrors every few minutes. No cars tailing me, no unmarked sedans parked nearby, no shadows where they shouldn't be, just open road and clean light. When I reached the property, I parked in the driveway and left the car running for a moment, the hum filling the silence. Then I shut it off and listened to the sound of wind moving through the pines. It was different now, not haunted, not heavy, just real. Inside, I unpacked the envelope Brooks had given me. Legal documents, final signatures, one cashier's check. I set them on the counter beside a single photo, the one I'd taken years ago when the house was still mine, before Cynthia sold it, before everything fell apart. For the first time, I didn't feel anger looking at it, just distance. The next morning, I walked down to the pond before sunrise. The air was cold enough to bite, but clear. I stood at the edge, watching mist rise from the water. This was the part I'd missed most, the stillness that came before daylight. A truck passed somewhere far off, maybe the mail carrier, Maybe just another early riser. The world kept moving. When I went back inside, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. Unknown number again. For a second, I thought about ignoring it. Then I pressed play. It was my father. Your mother and I are leaving town. Too much history here. We sold the house. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope someday you'll understand that we did what we thought was right. The message ended. No apology, no goodbye. Just another unfinished sentence from a man who couldn't finish anything that mattered. I deleted it and made breakfast. By mid-afternoon, the light through the windows shifted to that soft amber glow that makes time feel slower. I sat at the kitchen table, papers stacked neatly, coffee warm in my hands. Outside, the wind brushed against the siding, steady and familiar. The house didn't feel like a reminder anymore. It felt like proof. Proof that even when everything collapses, you can rebuild, one wall at a time, as long as you stop asking the ruins for permission. The quiet held steady, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel empty at all. The first morning back in the cabin felt like waking up in someone else's life. Sunlight came through the windows in perfect squares, hitting the floorboards I'd sanded myself years ago. The air smelled like cedar and coffee. No perfume, no city smog, no tension humming in the background. Just stillness. I walked out to the porch with my mug and sat on the top step. The pond below looked like glass, barely rippling. The government contractors had fixed every broken plank, reinforced every wall, but somehow they'd left the creek on that step exactly the same. It made me smile. For the first time, there was nothing left to check. No emails, no calls, no schedules waiting. My army leave papers were signed, restitution finalized, case closed. I wasn't Captain Callahan here, just Dana. Still, old instincts die hard. I caught myself scanning the tree line, checking for movement that wasn't there. Years of combat discipline don't just dissolve because peace finally showed up. They fade, slowly, one breath at a time. Around noon, I went into town for groceries. The cashier at the local store recognized me immediately. "You're that army lady," she said. "The one from the news?" "Yeah," I said. "That's me." She hesitated, then smiled. "Glad to see you got your place back. Folks around here were rooting for you. Not every day the good guy wins." "Guess today's the exception," I said, handing her my card. When I left, she called after me. "You're welcome anytime, Captain." It hit me then how long it had been since anyone said that, like it meant respect, not obligation. Back at the cabin, I unpacked groceries, turned on some old blues radio, and started cooking. Nothing fancy, just chicken and potatoes. But the sound of the skillet and the smell of butter filled the room with something I hadn't felt in years: normalcy. Halfway through lunch, I caught sight of my phone lighting up on the counter. Unknown number again. My shoulders stiffened, old reflex. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Miss Callahan?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "This is Warden Ellis from the Federal Correctional Facility in Flint. Your sister requested a call." I paused. "Why?" "She says it's important." I considered hanging up. Then I thought about all the things left unsaid, all the noise she'd filled my life with. "Put her through," I said. There was a click, then silence, and then her voice, smaller now, rasped thin. "Dana?" "I'm here," I said. "I'm not calling to apologize," she said quickly as if rehearsed. "Good," I said. "I'm not waiting for one. I just wanted you to know I get it now. The thing you kept trying to tell me." "What's that?" "That control isn't power, it's fear." I didn't say anything. "I used to think I was smarter than everyone," she continued. "But really I was just scared to be average. Scared that you, Miss Perfect Soldier, would always outshine me. So I tried to build something of my own, and I built it on lies." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I guess you win," she whispered. "This wasn't a contest," I said softly. She exhaled, the sound catching like she was fighting not to cry. "Yeah, well, doesn't feel that way in here. Cynthia," I said after a long pause. "I don't want revenge. I just wanted peace. You made it impossible for years, but I've got it now. Whatever you do with the rest of your time, do it honestly. That's the only kind of freedom you can still have." The line went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You always did talk like a soldier. End of 4. And you always did talk like someone who wanted the last word. I said. She laughed quietly this time. Guess that's not changing. Take care, Cynthia. The line disconnected. I set the phone down and just stood there, the hum of the fridge and the low music filling the silence. It wasn't relief exactly. It was something slower, deeper. A quiet closure that didn't need forgiveness to exist. That evening, I walked out to the deck again. The sun was setting behind the trees, the same way it used to when I came here to escape everything. Only this time, I wasn't running from anything. The water below glowed orange and gold, and for a second, I thought of all the people who'd stood in this spot before me. Soldiers, farmers, women like me who'd had to rebuild after the people closest to them tore everything apart. Peace isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or applause. It just slips in, quiet and steady, and waits for you to notice. Inside, I turned off the lights and let the dusk fill the room. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out. I poured a small glass of wine, the cheap kind I used to buy before all this started, and sat down at the kitchen table. The papers from the restitution hearing were still stacked neatly beside me. I opened them one last time, flipped through until I reached the final page with the judge's seal. The words felt almost poetic in their bureaucracy. Case closed. Full restitution awarded. Victim restored to ownership. I traced the embossed stamp with my thumb. The justice system isn't perfect. It's slow, messy, full of politics, but in this case, it worked. And it didn't need to roar to prove it. It arrived exactly how it should. Quietly, methodically, inevitably. I placed the papers back in the folder, pushed it aside, and opened my journal. I hadn't written in months. The first line came without effort. Justice doesn't shout. It whispers and it never forgets who was listening. The words sat there, plain and honest. No fancy phrasing, no dramatics, just truth. I closed the journal and leaned back, listening to the soft ticking of the wall clock. Every second sounded like a reminder that time, no matter how much of it you lose, still keeps offering you more. As the night settled in, I realized something simple but solid everything that had happened. All the chaos and betrayal hadn't broken me. It had just stripped away the noise until only the real things were left. The hum of the wind through the trees, the sound of my own breathing, the peace of knowing no one else owned my silence anymore. Out on the porch, the sky turned black, stars coming through one by one. I stepped outside barefoot, the wood cool beneath me, and looked up. No flashing lights, no agents, no accusations. Just the night, wide and steady. For the first time in years, I didn't need to brace myself for what came next. There was no next. There was just now. And it was enough.